The digital world, including social media, is rife with opportunities for brands to reach out to their desired audiences. Sometimes, with the best of intentions, brands do that and they experience some pretty unintended consequences. We're told that we should learn from failure, right? Everybody says go out, fail fast, but nobody always said it always had to be our own failures. So, thankfully, Mona Patel has seen and cataloged quite a few of these failures and is here to share some brand strategies that didn't work out quite as they had hoped and expected. And in many cases, those led to the exact opposite result. Drawing on her experience as author and entrepreneur, as UX expert, TEDx speaker, and founder of Motivate Design, Mona will then make a case for how to avoid unintended consequences with strategies, real, actual strategies, that enable us to better pinpoint problems before they happen. Let us all give a warm welcome to Mona Patel.
I'm a little obsessed with pigeons right now. There are 7 million pigeons in New York City, I believe, and I think about 1 million of them live in Battery Park, where I live. So I want you to imagine this. No. Okay, we have 2 balconies when you first walk in, and this year, all these pigeons start coming to this one balcony. And we're not really quite sure why, but it turns out all of our neighbors have put up nets, and so the pigeons have nowhere to go but our balcony. Kids are obsessed because they're putting nests in, and like these little babies are coming out. We're talking about flying and what is it going to be like to fly for the first time. That's really cute in the spring. And then it happens again in May, and it happens again in June, and it happens again in August. So these are, pigeons are homing pigeons. They know where their home is, and up to 1,300 miles they can come back to their home. So I have like 4 generations of pigeons now hanging out in this one balcony. So how would you frame this problem, right? I have a lot of pigeons, they're really kind of dirty, and I don't want them on my balcony. So I Google, go to Amazon, and Amazon tells me to buy plastic spikes. And if you put the plastic spikes up, the pigeons will go away. So we buy plastic spikes and we put them all over the first balcony, which doubles my problem, because all the dumb pigeons still come to this balcony, and all the smart ones go to my other one, which had nothing on it before. So now I have double the problem, and just an update to what's happened this week, I now bought metal spikes and put them all over all my balconies, and now they're on my windowsills and pecking at 5 in the morning to wake me up. This is an example of an unintended consequence to an otherwise, I thought, smart strategy. If you Google, everyone puts up spikes. But it didn't quite work out. This is actually called the Cobra effect. I don't know if you've heard this story. Some of you who've gone to business school may have heard it. It goes back to the British rule in India, where there were a lot of venomous cobras all over the streets in Delhi. And so the government came up with like a crafty idea and said, we'll pay you a bounty for finding these cobras and bringing them in. And so in like 2 or 3 weeks, they had all the cobras come in, and the cobras were off the streets, and they were kind of really impressed with themselves and came up with a great strategy. And then all of a sudden, there was this massive increase in the number of cobras that started to come in for the bounty payment. And as they investigated, they found that the Indians, being smart entrepreneurs, decided that they would breed cobras. Why not, right? If I'm gonna get paid for cobras and I got paid off of 1, why don't I get paid off 10? So they breed cobras, they bring them in. British government is very pissed about this whole situation, don't feel like being duped. And so they said, forget this, no more bounty. So now you have all these cobras that you've bred, what are you gonna do? Let them loose in Delhi. So now they have more cobras on the streets than when they started. These are all examples of unintended consequences. And in talking about customer experience, which we'll get to through this, you'll hear that the framing of the problem is actually the same. I have a need. I need you to change something, and so I'm gonna come up with a way for you to change it. And there's no user research, there's no real empathy, there's no understanding of what these people will do when, or these pigeons or these cobras, will do when put in checkmate. And that's an interesting angle for the strategy, and it does work also on digital. So early in my career, I had an opportunity to work with the NIH for about 3 years. And what we were gonna do is make it easy for you to apply for a grant. And so we did a tremendous amount of research to figure out how do people apply for grants, what are their biggest questions, what order do they need information to make it as easy to process as possible. We created a website that made it so easy to apply for a grant. It's kind of like Domino's Pizza Tracker, but in 2002, right? It's like massively easy. And we launched it. And what ends up happening is the soft launch, they like open it up to people who have already applied for grants in the past, and there's this massive influx of grants because it's so easy. They don't have enough people to actually process those grants. So they take the site down. Now you have a whole bunch of people who thought they submitted a grant but don't know what happened, Domino's Pizza Tracker's gone, very confused. So then they call. So now you have people with the employees of NIH have a lot of grants and they have a lot of calls that are coming in, all intending to do something good for the end user, all intending to be customer-centered. But the actual impact that happened to them was the problem. And they pulled being customer-centered as soon as that problem happened. And this happens with a lot of clients that we work with. I'll get into my background, but regardless of whether we're working with finance, healthcare, pharma, it doesn't matter. Almost every client, definitely every industry, there's been this pivot point where we'll do customer research, we'll come back and say, here's what people want, and then maybe that's not for the good of me. I might not make money. So think of telecom, just picking on them, but really it's not only them. How many of you are sure that you have the best plan for your cable, internet, and phone at home? Like absolute best, you're getting the most that you. I just saw someone go, ah! You're getting the best deal. You don't know, right? And that is sometimes intentional. Because if it is easy to find the cheapest plan, then you'll pay less than you're paying right now, which is not to the benefit of the company. You all have been here. There have been opportunities, I think, and even talking to some people over breakfast, where you could have done something easy for the customer, but maybe that wasn't good for you. And that's where customer experience breaks down. That's when we take what we see and we say, maybe that's not for the good of me, and then what do? This has happened again and again in my 20-year career. Prior to starting Motivate, which is the agency I started 10 years ago, I did this work. I probably ran, like 400 or 500 interview sessions with people. And I would come back and present this data to clients, and 50% of the time they listened and 50% of the time they didn't. So a big part of starting this agency was to figure out, what do you actually want to hear? A lot of what we do with the clients that we work with is ask this question, which I give to you and hope that you use, is what are you looking to hear and what don't you want to hear? And that already sets the framework for better research. What is it that would throw your entire strategy off? What would surprise you? What would challenge you? Do you want to hear any of that? Otherwise, don't do the research. And that's been the kind of signature for how we've approached it. And it was interesting because a lot of that is because of an unintended consequence for me. I started the company 10 years ago. I have a 9-year-old. So I was pregnant right after I started that company. And because of that, I have been very careful to just take on projects that I want to work on. And these unintended consequences can be positive, can be negative. It's a really fun exercise to play in your head. And I'll give you some strategies towards the end of how to avoid the ones that are not so great. So let's say we own a factory and we create bonbons. Like we package bonbons and we get them out. We're all designers and brand strategists, so we wanted it to look good. We want it to be kind of pretty and nice. So we hired some employees to help us with the packaging. But the thing is, we have a big order. And so we have to get more bonbons out than maybe we're used to. You all may have seen this. Oh no, did it play? No. Have you all seen this? Yes. Uh-oh. Can I play it? No, it doesn't play. Oh yes, it played. Okay, so we're packaging, we're having fun, everything is great, life is good. And then because the factory needs to output more, we speed it up. Because we frame the problem as we need to speed it up and get more out. But what happens to the actual employees? They don't have a choice, because what is their problem? They don't want to get fired, right? So you have people over here who have a very different goal than the people over here who run the factory. And so the factory workers do the best that they can. But when you speed things up too fast, you'll start seeing they put it in their mouth, they pull it off the conveyor belt. There's some bra stuffing that's about to happen in a moment. We have consequences to our actions, and you can actually predict what these consequences will be if you ask the right questions to the right people. That's pretty much it. You know, a lot of times what we do is we frame the problem as what we need to get. And then we go off and we try to get it. And that checkmate, as I said, of people who are influenced by that. It can be your employees, it can be your customers, it can be your suppliers, it can be past employees, it can be your competitors. Somebody, if screwed, will react. And so our goal when we're creating designs, when we're creating strategies, is to figure that out before. And you figure it out by asking. The most common thing is, can you really predict when things are gonna go wrong? Not always, obviously, but you can get pretty close. Again, remember I said, I did about 500 rounds of research on products that had been created, where when we came back and said, especially usability testing, here's what we found, nothing was really that surprising. It was like, oh, I could have seen that. Oh, that makes sense that they didn't know what that button was. That makes sense that pricing is like in the wrong place. So if it made sense after, it can make sense before. You just need to do that activity before you launch. Not everything is always light. So in researching a little bit about this talk, actually this is the one that inspired it. So if you ask Americans, I think about 400 were asked, whether the Me Too movement has been successful, many will say yes, about 70% will say workplaces are different, and they feel like there's a positive improvement on sexual harassment and sexual assault reporting than before Me Too. But then there's a really interesting article from HBR, I think it's called The Backlash of #MeToo, which points to the opposite trend, that about 50% of both men and women don't really want to have a one-on-one meeting with each other alone. And about 22% and 22% of women, 44% of men don't want to have social interactions outside of work anymore. And then the one that honestly bothers me the most is 11% of women and 16% of men, though that's increased to 19% this year, won't hire an attractive woman. Could we have predicted that? I don't know. But I do know that having done my own round of research during Me Too, if you pull two guys aside and say, tell me what you're thinking about this, like what are you most worried about? What's the worst case for this? They did tell me. You have to ask the right question in the right way. It has to be the right format. It has to be an open exchange where people feel comfortable telling you the truth. But if you ask them, people will tell you. This is what I do for a living. And about 3 years ago, we came up with a conversation-based research method, where instead of interviewers going in and having a conversation, having an interview with someone, you let two people talk. And you're almost a fly on the wall that gets to listen, because they've given you permission, to a recording of their conversation. And it goes all over the place. Researchers have a conniption when it comes to this method, because it didn't go in the right order, and nobody asked why, and how do you know that they didn't mean this? But what ends up happening is the truth. You get very real, very raw information from people who are willing to have a conversation with another person like them about a topic. So how do we do this? Well, that research method is based on the premise that I hear that we need lean, fast, agile, sprint-based thinking in how we approach work. But if you slow down just a little, a half day, and ask questions and listen, you're in a better place than if you don't. We have gone, I think, too far along the let's just design, let's fail fast. I like to fail less. I hate failing. Failing sucks. I want to fail less. So I want to listen and be more aligned to the people that I'm designing for and the people I didn't even intentionally know I was designing for before I put my strategies out. Slowing down just a little to be safe with your strategy is the strategy. And you can slow down by listening. You can slow down by asking. Listening, I just took you through. I'll also take you through a set of questions around asking. Actually. So how this method works, and I want to show you an example of it. We worked with the Ad Council whenever we're coming up with new methods. And they had done some focus groups around why people keep a gun locked and unloaded in their home when they have kids in the home. And through that research, they came up with a campaign around lock your gun. Like, put it away, or put a trigger lock on it. And they had a lot of data around it only takes 15 seconds to take the gun and have it ready for use. It's much better because kids are in your home and about 15 kids die a day from guns in homes. So this is the campaign that currently is out around gun violence that they did. We did this insider insight approach, where it's conversation-based. 2 gun owners having a conversation about why they choose to keep their gun unlocked, but loaded in their home. And what we found is, of course, they're worried about their kids and their kids' safety, but the way they see the gun is very different than the way the strategists were seeing the gun. The gun isn't scary. To this small set of users that we talked to, the gun's not scary. It's like a knife or a rope or scissors that you have in your home. Don't be an idiot about how you use it. But it's here for our safety. God gave it to us. It's here for protection. If somebody comes into the home, my entire family knows how to use a gun. So why would I lock the gun away from my family? Are you saying I'm a bad parent? Are you saying that I haven't trained my kids on how to use a gun? Are you saying that my kids don't listen to me? Because I already told them not to. So the strategy is actually the opposite mental model of what the gun owners have. You know, in my home, it's a safe artifact. And in my home, my kids listen to me. And so I don't need to hide anything from my kids. Now, anybody who has a teenager or has been a teenager knows if you tell a teenager, don't do that, what do? Right? So those of you strategists in the room can see that's a more interesting opportunity, the overconfidence. And like, I told my kid not to do it, and they're gonna listen to me. That's a much easier angle to go at than lock your gun, which I don't think I should lock it. So by listening, you get the data to help you with the unintended consequence. Because that campaign didn't resonate. It will, once tweaked, and that's our goal, right? What we're trying to do is resonate and be customer-centered. So what can you do to avoid unintended consequences? Ray Dalio says it best, your first idea is probably dumb, essentially. Like, everyone else can come up with it too. And so it's second and third order thinking that come up with better ideas, that push you to think of things that aren't just easy and the top of mind on the first one. So that's, if nothing else, just don't use your first idea. Use your second, use your third, and in order to access that, ask one question and then what. And so again, through all the research that I looked at for unintended consequences, this is basically what came up. Just take the moment to ask and then what. Seems very simple. I don't think that's enough. As a researcher, I think that there are definitely more questions that you can ask. So the next set of slides, which will be available for you, have 20 questions that we've come up with that help you really dig in and around an idea to make sure that you've looked at it from a couple different lenses, a couple different perspectives. I still advocate for doing research over these questions, but I'd rather give you questions that do nothing. So the first set is, am I seeing this clearly? You know, a lot of times you have a solution because that's just the easiest solution, or it's your idea. Or you've done it before at another company and you brought it over here. There's some self-interest in the idea that you've come up with, and so you may not be willing to listen to other ideas. There's emotions that are involved. Maybe fear of doing something new, maybe change and not wanting to have change. Maybe optimism, because I'm a founder and I need everyone to rally around me, and so I need to be confident in this idea and get everyone focused on this idea. What emotions do you have around this idea? What happens if I remove emotions? Do I still want to do it? And then how can we learn while in motion? How can I encourage people to give me feedback, real feedback, that it's not working before? And are my incentives aligned to people giving me real feedback? You know, are people scared of telling me this is not going to work? I've talked to some employees and I have heard that, and I was like, that's a dumb idea. But it's not my job. Is that happening? Second set is, am I willing to listen? People ask for feedback, they don't listen to feedback. And so are you actually willing to hear when you might be wrong? Are you willing to listen to, are you willing to hear what people aren't saying and probe into it? You know, there are a lot of questions that you can use that for, but honestly the best technique for that is silence. Just waiting for people to give you that truth. Have you asked why other people think this idea would fail? The third set is, where should I second guess? You know, where can I look at some of the ideas that were dismissed, some of the ideas that the intern gave, some of the ideas that we had in the past, and say, like, should we have dismissed those? Are these potentially better ways for us to solve the problem. And the last set is, can I view it from another lens? Usually forward, which is if I fast forward 10 days, 10 months, 10 years, whatever, and I look back on today, what will I wish I had? What information would I wish I had? If I look at the same kind of decision that I made in the past, what did I learn from that? If I dig deeper into the data and question the data, am I gonna find anything different? And if I go up to like, does this align to my missions and my core value? Is that gonna make sense? And so again, just these kinds of questions, 20 of them. It shouldn't take more than, it depends on your team, 1 hour to like 4 hours, I should say, will help you avoid those unintended consequences. Will help you think about, am I truly doing something that's customer-centered, or am I doing something that's good for me? I'm not a factory worker. So listen, observe, and hear what you may not want to hear. This is not easy, but over time, it is fun, actually, to be surprised and to actually get an insight. You know, to not have somebody say they're delivering it, because I don't know how that works, but to actually find your own and say, this is cool, this is different. I did not think of this. I'm excited to be here because I did not think of this. Creating win-win solutions. You know, I kind of force the pigeons out. Where are they gonna go? Obviously they're gonna bother me. I don't care about the pigeons. I care about me. That's not win-win. You know, thinking about who am I serving and what's the underpinning of how they think. In that Kroger example, you don't think the fact that it's British rule had anything to do with that? You know, are these people on board with my success? Are they gonna sabotage me the first second they have? That can be your customers, that can be your employees, that can be your past customers. And that might be why you get the reviews that you're getting. And then take the time to save the time. The most common thing I hear is we don't have time for research. Well, then end up with the consequences that you have. You have to make time to listen. You have to make time to get smarter. You don't need to do research. I gave you 20 questions. But research is better than those questions. Research is where you start hearing those stories like the gun owners. And you start thinking, my strategy is not going to work. This is not going to work. And you come up with a better one that has less unintended consequences. Thank you.
Coming up there.
I know, you have a cake.
It's amazing.
It's fancy.
I think it's so fascinating right now to think about taking the time to save the time.
Yeah.
Right, and there are so many images, the pigeons will never leave me. I've had newborn twins and pigeons and newborn pigeons, and it's not a fun moment.
It's not.
I favor the twins, mine, not theirs. But I did, the image that really stayed in my head is the slow image.
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to stick with me, but we're hearing this a lot, and it's our job to slow down and soak it in, and at the same time, and really think things through in order to take the time to save the time, but at the same time, we're living in this. And so it's quite, you know, there's a certain bravery, right, in standing up and saying, I need a moment.
Yes.
We need a moment. We all need a moment. So.
I mean, I would advocate for designing that moment in. I mean, one of the reasons I used a sign is that sign, every time you approach that sign, you slow down. You know, versus having to decide when you slow down. When you have to decide, when you have to build it into your process, it's a pain because people don't want to. But if it's automatically included in your brand planning, in your strategy session, you must slow down. You know, you have that 2-hour checkpoint with the 20 questions, or you have that research project, then it's happening automatically and it's harder to not do. Again, it's to Prashad's point around change.
Right.
Design it into the system so that changing and getting out of the system is more work.
Right, yeah. So when you're talking about talking to people, or getting people to talk to each other, setting it up right, the right people to have that conversation, and you're asking ahead to hear that truth. I find in recent years, not so recent years, that in order to prove something to somebody, you need a fair amount of data. So the whole thing about deep qualitative with 8 people. Get an anthropologist to go out, I'm married to one, so that's the example I use for anthropology. So, you know, go out, do 8 really deep interviews with the right people, and they go, oh, that's great, we do 20. You know, and so how do you take information that's happened in a conversation between two people or even three sets of two people and say it in a way that's meaningful to our clients in this day and age?
I love it. Okay, so I think in order to get clients to think differently, there are two ways. One is data. The other is a story. And I see many clients be moved by a story way faster and way further than data, because it has the why and it has an emotion in it. So I'm going to give you an example. We were working with a telecom company who wants to understand aging in place, because if you live in your home longer, you pay for cable longer. So they had done lots of research around this. They had lots of data. They had not launched one single new idea. We came inside our insight is 2 weeks. Okay, so it's very fast. We had stories of a husband and a wife who had led independent lives and made a lot of their careers. Now they're in their home. It's a beautiful home. It's their dream home. They don't want to leave, but they hate each other. Like, they've never actually been around each other for so much time. They're bumping into each other, and like one spills the milk and then doesn't clean it up. And these are the stories that we're hearing. And so as you think about aging in place, and you think about what are the opportunities around making people want to stay, you start seeing the opportunities in such a meaningful way, because you're like, oh, I've been there. Like, my husband drives me crazy. I've been there. You know, and that's an interesting place to design around. Or all the kids coming together on Tuesday and then nobody comes from Wednesday through Monday. That's another opportunity space around scheduling that you could provide, right? These stories help them see it, and honestly, it's one. Any of you who are entrepreneurs know sometimes one time you hear one piece of advice and you're like off. Right? That's where I go with it. You want to validate it with data. You want to make sure you didn't like end up with one crazy story, but that resonance, that empathy, that qualitative brings, I haven't seen it that strong on quant really ever.
Good. And one last question. We'll see if we can sneak this in.
Yes.
So we're listening in order to design for what human beings, people, citizens want. What if that doesn't reconcile super well with what makes the client successful?
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. A lot of times it doesn't. Yeah. So the customers want something easy. You don't want to make it easy because you'll lose money. The customers want more efficiency. You don't want to make it more efficient because you know that if they call you, you can upsell them, right? So that's what I meant by that win-win, where that will work short term. But then if you are looking at the other side, which is the point of this morning, and saying, why do I have bad reviews? Why don't customers love us? How come people line up at the door at Apple and they don't line up here? It's because you don't have that long-term view. You're actually not serving anybody but yourself. And so having that conversation with the client of, you're not customer experience. Like, you're not customer centered. If you were, these would be the things that you're doing. It's okay that you're not. I'm cool with you not being, but these are the consequences of not being customer centered. You will get these kinds of reviews. You will have very fickle customers that go to your competitors very easily. You will have people who don't love you. And if those are things that you want, then you have to change what you're doing. If those are not things you want, then keep doing what you're doing.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.